All right, everybody, we are back for another week here at Wired Differently. I am Christina Blue Hooper, your resident business designer. I have with me today Victoria Caldwell, your fractional COO and expert in people systems, and Mindset Melanie Branch, your expert at getting your brain to behave so you can actually do what you need to do every day. We have a really cool topic today. We're kind of zoning in a little bit more on Victoria's area of expertise and talking about what is going on when your team isn't working well together and what can you do about it. And this happens early, right? This isn't something that happens just when people have like big teams. This starts happening like we've got a student with just a couple of offshore people helping with social media, and she's already having these problems, right? Yeah. So it doesn't take much before they start cropping up. But let's dive in a little bit, Victoria. What's the first thing you think of when we're thinking about your team not working well together?
Well, this is a very broad topic. You know, it comes down to what's happening. Like, what are the symptoms? What's happening when they're not working together? And so I could just take a few examples as opposed to, because it's such a broad topic. It's not, oh, they're not working together. What does that mean? They're not working well together.
That's a good starting point. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs just feel really overwhelmed when it comes to managing teams. Speaking from my own experience as well, managing teams is like, I would literally rather herd cats. It's such a struggle for me, and it's something that's so natural for you. So it's like a lot of times we're just really frustrated. We're just like, I just wish things would happen a certain way. So when you're just a ball of frustration, how do you even start to approach figuring out what's going on?
Well, and just so that everybody understands how good Victoria is at delegating and leading, she and I had a marketing meeting the other day. And before the meeting, she messaged me and said, hey, do you want to put together an agenda so that we stay on point? And I was like, sure. And within 2 minutes, she sends me a list. She's like, here's the 7 things I want to cover. And I was like, why am I putting the list? She already knows. Okay, I guess okay. It just is that her brain instantly goes to, this is what needs to be done. How do you want to do it? So please speak. I'm sorry. I'm so excited to hear your ideas on this.
What's so funny about that? One thing about, and see, to me, I didn't even think about it. It was just like, oh, okay. We want to keep the meeting on track. I know Melanie well enough to know what frustrates her, you know. And it was just second nature. It's like, okay, we want this meeting on time. We don't want to go off track. We want to make sure we get it, make sure it's productive. We both like execution. Boom, let's see what we're going to talk about, what we're going to come out of this meeting with. And then it just, it took me like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And Melanie, to speak to that point, and again, I am conscious of the fact that I didn't look at it this way until you mentioned it, because it was so second nature. And it doesn't bother me at all because I'm to a certain extent similar. Melanie doesn't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You don't tell Melanie what to do. So it's like, how do you work with somebody? And not in this case, because it's not neither here nor there. It doesn't bother me at all. But for someone else who already struggles, how do you tell somebody what to do without telling them what to do?
See, that is such a genius part of it, though, because like you naturally consider the different people involved. So it's like, here's the thing I need to do. Here's the people involved with it. And here's the areas where these people are likely to either derail us or ways we need to support them in certain ways. Like, I was not allowed at this meeting. That's my role.
Best way possible. In the best way possible. But yeah.
Well, and I mean, this is part of teams, right? So it's like, I had a student the other day that was like, I'm looking so forward to when I can be like the 3 of you guys and I can have business partners and everything will just be so easy. And I'm like, whoa, back up. Business partners are great, but it's not instantly super easy. It brings a lot of the same challenges that you have working with a team, but you also have competing big personalities. Right? Like, we're all experts in our own right, and we have to figure out where to draw the line on who needs to lead where. Right? And this has taken us months. This isn't something that happened overnight. It wasn't something that we were able to just jump into. We had to work on it, right? So teams can look like a lot of things. Teams can look like business partners. It can look like promo partners for an event. It can look like staff that you actually have employed. right? Imagine you're running a summit and you're bringing a bunch of people together to go speak. That's a team. You're trying to organize more than just you to get something done. And things fall apart. They do, right? So that's why we're saying, like, I wasn't allowed in that meeting because I've been the one derailing most of the things related to marketing because I enjoy the execution and the operations and the fulfillment side, which seems weird.
The ideation.
Yeah, I like the ideation of it. I struggle with like the actual steps, but I like brainstorming. What are we going to do for our clients today? What are we going to do for our students today? What can we do to make their experience better, more fun, more engaging, get them to take the actions that they need to take? That's fun for me. Marketing and talking about all of the cool stuff that I did, not so much.
Yeah.
So we made decisions that I wasn't even coming to that meeting, that Victoria and Melanie were going to do it. And then they were going to just tell me what I need to do on the back end while I work on building out our courses and stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can all agree communication is the number one most important thing.
Yeah, we actually had that as one of our first questions, is improving communication, Miss Psychic over here.
Well, the communication, which I was getting to, but you also have to understand how each person is wired and how that person communicates and how they receive information and how they, and that's different. And sometimes what frustrates team members is somebody operates differently than the way they do. And they don't necessarily see eye to eye. Now, they're different. Some people are just straight up rude, or some perceive the other person to be rude when they just have a different way of communicating things that's not as comfortable for them. So a lot of times, a lot of the miscommunication in teams is a misunderstanding of the person themselves. So that is really getting to the bottom of that. And when I've had that issue, especially in smaller teams, I want to hear what the other person perceives and how they see things, just out of curiosity. And a lot of times it's just that either they said something or did something in a way that rubbed the other person the wrong way, or someone doesn't have the information that they need and they come at it a different way. And different perspectives. You have different lifestyles, different backgrounds, different beliefs, and all of that. And a lot of times it's so funny because I know I was doing a launch, and the owner and one of the copywriters on the team were just clashing, and each of them were coming to me about neither one of them were wrong. It's just that they both came to me, and to this day, and then I would talk to them. They would feel better, come back. Now, this was my first one. I would do things probably a little bit differently, talk to them and explain the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
That maybe this is what's going on. And they would go back, and the next thing, they were all chummy. They were the best of friends. And to this day, which was probably over a decade ago, neither one of them knew what happened. And I've done that countless times.
Yeah.
Because they were able to understand that. And I just helped them probably understand, well, what if this is their perspective and that, and the other one, the same thing. And we come back, and then they're like, oh. And so when they went back to that person to communicate, they went back to communicate from a different viewpoint and a different understanding. And then they sorted their own selves out, but both people understood the other person. And again, to this day, they have no idea what happened behind the scenes. They thought they just worked it out.
Well, there's a sound on TikTok.
We got a launch to do. I don't have time to be derailing this project to babysit people. This was the fastest way to results, to get it done. And they sorted their issues out, and they understood each other better in the process. And that launch had to go on, and, as opposed to taking this time and having, no. Because if you put them together, it was going to be
yeah.
And so it was just, well, we'll do it this way. And we got a launch to do, and reminding them of why we're here, what the mission is, and that it's bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
So
there's a sound on TikTok of two people texting each other, and it's it reminds you of everybody's individual perspective. So one person's like, do you even want to go? And the person reading it goes, oh, how thoughtful. Do you even want to go? So you're looking at how one person is angry texting and the other person is like, oh my God, that's so sweet. They're thinking about me, right? So really understanding too, everybody's perspective is a combination of their experience and their mindset. So if you have a team that you've built from people around the globe, which a lot of us entrepreneurs do, then you really have to see, you know, what goes on culturally, where they're from, what goes on, is English their first language or their second language or their third language, you know, and then also thinking about the level of emotional control that they have cultivated, because the higher up you go in business, the more emotional control you need. You know, the expression, it's not personal, it's business. That's so true. And so if you're dealing with somebody, say you have a freelancer on your team, right, who's new to the industry, they're still taking jobs that aren't super duper aligned with them because they don't really know what they're doing. They might have a lot on their plate. You never know what's going on behind closed doors in someone's house. So if you have an issue between team members, think about their personal situation first and see, you know, could this be misplaced anger and upset? Or could this just be a situation of those people can't text anymore because they don't understand each other's tone? They need to communicate verbally over a Zoom and then send notes after the call. Because the three of us can text all day long. We're in the Slack. If we don't understand something, then we just say, I don't understand. What do you mean? And then we'll send like a voice note, that sort of thing. But if you believe that it's based out of malicious intent, then you really just got to start there. We need everybody to be on the same playing field going after the same goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's true. Like both of you echoed that. You both said that, like, when you have a mission, when you have a goal, when you have something you're communicating, you can create that rallying point that we can start talking with people and moving people forward on. And I know we had a situation at the Academy that is not the first time I've heard someone say this. I'm going to throw this at you because Victoria wasn't there on campus when this happened. And I'm kind of curious what your inputs would be. So one of our students has hired this team to help with social media marketing. It has, I think, 3 people that are on that team that's working with her on stuff. She's not getting what she wants out of them, right? So she just wants like X to happen, has not fully communicated what X is. It's not written down into an SOP. So she holds this meeting with all of them and she lets them know ahead of time that depending on the outcome of this meeting, they may be fired.
Okay.
And tries to get everybody on the same page and has this meeting to kind of organize everybody together. Still not working like she wanted it to after the outcome of this meeting. Not surprising to me. Victoria, what are your thoughts on that scenario and how she handled it? Because that happens all the time. Entrepreneurs are like, we're going to have a sit down and we're going to figure out what's broken and we're going to fix it, or we're going to, bad things are happening. Like that's a common trend.
I tend to shy away from that method because people come into the meeting on the defensive.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, again, this was second nature to me. I held them individually because I wanted each and every one of them to voice their frustrations in a safe space without getting into the dogfight.
Yeah.
Right? Because then and you might say, well, that takes longer. Actually, those meetings could take longer and you end up worse if you try to bring it together. Whereas you can get to the bottom of something in 15, 20 minutes doing it individually, but you bring them all together and now you're on there for 2 hours trying to dissolve, you know, a fight, because now everybody is not looking to do the same thing you're looking to do. They're looking to defend why they're right. And you're trying to figure out what's going on.
In the wrong mindset too, because they're coming in being like, I asked for X, I'm getting Y, I want X. What are you doing to do to give me X? Instead of like, why, you know, I asked for X and I'm getting Y, where's the breakdown? It's more like, how do I force you to do X?
That's another thing. How do I force you to do it? One, when we talk about setting them up for success in the beginning, one, have you clearly defined what success is? Have you clearly defined that they have the capabilities to deliver it? Have you clearly, you know, given them all the tools and resources? In most cases, it's not the case. And communicated that. And then you're looking at the team. This is why they're like, I can't find people, but you haven't you haven't set them up for success, they're going to fail in most cases, because now we're expecting them to read our minds and go find the tools and the resources to potentially do what they think you want, but then you find out that that's not what you want as the leader. And then now they're at fault because you didn't communicate and give them the tools that you wanted them to do, because it's like, well, you're the social media manager. I thought you knew that. And it's like, yes, but I'm a social media manager. You are a different business owner than the next one. And social media strategies can be tailored, and what you want to present and how you want to present and what you do in the strategy is different from one business to the next.
Yeah.
It's
And
just like with you doing business design. You're like, well, you're the business designer. Yeah, but your business is different from this business.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime you're hiring people for marketing, you don't get to be hands off. You're the subject matter expert. So unless you have managed to curate years of content that you personally had a hand in putting out that is still relevant, your business hasn't pivoted, it hasn't changed in years, what you sell hasn't changed in years, and everything that you've said over the last 2 years is still relevant, you have to participate in the creation of content. That doesn't mean you have to create it. Doesn't mean you have to be on video, putting your face on the world, but you do have to participate in some way. And like this particular student was not doing that. So she wasn't getting the result that she wanted out of her social media marketing team, because she wasn't giving them any kind of seed or root content to spawn out of that had her opinions on it. And she didn't like when they just made stuff up. So now they're sitting here.
That was the thing. I've worked with
in a rock and a hard place
like that. And the owner would get so frustrated and so angry. And it's like, this is not how we do things. How do we do things?
Yeah.
Because, this, and her reaction was always, but there was no clear communication. She just expected you to get it.
Yeah.
And then that put everyone in a frenzy. And so when they would try to please her, they didn't know what side of her they were going to get. If she was in she's in a good mood
That's such a good point too. Like, they do try and please you. Your employees, people that you hire, are generally trying to keep you happy. If they don't keep you happy, they're not going to make money. So like, I know when I was working for people in a marketing agency, I wanted input from my clients. I wanted them to be interviewed for content we were creating. I wanted them to participate in the creation process. But the more I pushed them to do that, the less happy they were. So we had to do things not the way we would have liked to do them. We had processes that worked based on that person, showing up to be interviewed for content. But when they didn't want to do that, our processes had to be different. It had to change. We had to go just pull stuff and just like Google mashups, like we'll just go do some research and slam something together just to try and keep the client happy. Right. But then that only lasts a certain period of time, right? They're like, yay, okay, so I don't have to meet with you every week now. Cool, great. That makes me happy. 3 months later, 6 months later, when stuff isn't working the way we told them originally that it would, it's because they wouldn't participate in the interviews. So we're not following our normal process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you have really talented people, if you're not participating in the way they need you to participate to get the result that they said you could get,
it really goes back to the environment, and it also goes back, and who sets the environment? The leader always sets the environment.
Always.
Yeah. Whether you're hands off, that's setting the environment. So if you get what you discern as crappy work and you're hands off, what do you expect? Now, micromanaging is a problem too, because now it's like for somebody like me, don't tell me what to do. Don't micromanage me. Because if you don't trust that I can get it done, I'm just going to say, well, you do it, because you're spending just as much time here as me. I can go do something else. I got other things to do. If you don't trust me to do it, then don't hire me to do it. Yeah. That's my philosophy. I'm going to trust you, but also creating that safe environment. So if they make a mistake, you're not going to tear their heads off, because now they're going to be hyper afraid of offending you, which
Yeah.
means they're going to end up offending you because you're going to do the things that you fear them. You're going to end up creating the result that you fear by your actions unconsciously. You're going to fear offending and losing your job. And then that means you're going to do poor quality work, which means it's going to offend and you're going to lose your job. So they're trying to please you. They're trying not to do this. You're frustrated. And then it just comes and blows up. So if they make a mistake, you point out the mistake respectfully and you help them and you figure out how to help them improve. So you instill that confidence in them that, look, everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes. It's okay. You'll do better next time. Maybe, you know, what was the misunderstanding? Because you will always find, well, I was thinking this because of this, because of this. And you're like, oh, okay. This shows that there's a breakdown in our communication and understanding. Then let's fix that. And that allows you to continuously improve the individual, the company, yourself as a leader, and everyone wins. And everyone is more confident at the end of the day.
On the note of mistakes, I have seen so much research lately. It's so funny that you mentioned this. I saw something today on TikTok, something yesterday, and something the day before, that all of the research shows if you tell somebody to try and make a mistake, or to, like, this is how you can help people that are perfectionists. So you can tell them to aim for 3 mistakes a day. And what ends up happening when you take the fear out of it, you make less mistakes. Like, the percentage of less mistakes you make when you're trying for it is ridiculous. There's also a research experiment between boy coders and girl coders where we realize, and this isn't even what they were aiming for with the research, but they gave girls and boys in the same coding class the same stuff to do, and it was kind of hard, high level stuff. And the boys, because you can watch keystrokes at the end of it, the boys just were trying to be good. They didn't care. They're like, they tried everything, lots of mistakes, lots of backspaces and whatnot. The girls did a third of the work that the boys did because they were afraid of making mistakes. So we train boys to be great and we train girls to be perfect.
Right.
And there was a pottery class where the teacher split up two different groups. And one group, he said, make the best, most perfect piece of pottery by the end of the semester. And the other one, he said, to just make as many as possible. And so the group that just made as many as possible came up with the best one at the end. And the ones that were trying for perfection couldn't get a hang of it.
Wow. Love it. Love it. And, we see that in our team. It's like, we sometimes striving for perfection, which is one reason why someone wasn't allowed at the meeting. And it's like, it will improve, because I strive for excellence.
Yes.
Because you can control excellence. Perfection, no. And it's like, let's get it out there. Our students will tell us what they love and what is not working, and we will implement and we will iterate in the process. Yeah. We don't need to think for them. We need to be there for them, to help them the best way we can help them based on what they need and what they have discovered. And we have in the process discovered that they need, but we don't do that by sitting in our meetings being perfect. We do that by the collective. Now we want to put out a great, we put out a great product and service. That's undeniable. But, there's a limit to trying to be perfect in that process as well. And it actually derails progress, and that derails us. It derails our students. I won't say it derails. It doesn't serve anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was a big thing that we had to do even amongst ourselves to get in alignment is, we realized there was something that was off between the three of us and we couldn't really put our fingers on it, figure out exactly what it is. And we started a conversation. And part of the beginning of that conversation was, what are we even trying to achieve? What is the goal? What do we want to accomplish? Right. And when we knew that, then it was a lot easier to start breaking down okay, well, this is where my strengths lie. And this is where Victoria's strengths lie. And this is where Melanie's strengths lie. And if we're going to get to that goal, we need to lean on everybody's strengths. We need to lean on where we're the strongest and be able to speak up without fear of, backlash or negative things or blah, 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 blah. Like these ladies are working really hard to train me to not be afraid, to be like, my brain's doing a dumb today. Help. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a huge thing to be able to do. Now, I know, Victoria, you led that process. Like, so one of the questions that we had was like, what steps can we take to ensure everyone is aligned with our goals? You led what are the goals and what are we going to do about it now that we have them defined? So can you share some of kind of what went into that process?
You mean when we were, when we got to this point, right where we are now?
You're like, what do you even want to do with the academy? What is going on?
Yeah, because first of all, I love execution, and execution wasn't happening. Melanie was frustrated. Execution isn't happening. Right?
And Melanie withdraws when she doesn't feel when anything happens, Melanie goes quiet. So there's that.
Yeah, me too. If I'm afraid that I'm going to like disappoint somebody or whatever, like I kind of do the same thing. So we had pulled back pretty far from what we were doing with the academy. It had kind of gone stagnant. It wasn't continuing to grow like we had, hoped and designed and dreamed it to do. And it was just because we weren't communicating the right way. We didn't have an alignment towards the goals. We did when we launched it, and we rushed and we got it launched, and then it just kind of blah, 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 blah. And this happened.
And I asked her about that, and I said, well, because of course you're being the spearhead of this academy, I was just noticing the patterns and said, this is what we were originally working on. What is the problem? And you stated what the issue was. That was the first time you had verbally, communicated what your issue was. And then I said, okay, then let's deal with that. What exactly do you want? Because we would get in these meetings and we would go back and forth because all of us were thinking something completely different. So we're communicating based on our frame of reference. And at the end of the day, it wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't your vision for the academy. And it's like, well, what is your vision? Because now all of these things are going in circles because we're looking at what we think is the vision, what was communicated from our understanding. But then even that, it had evolved. And there was a lack of communication. And then you were like, okay. And so we sat down and I gave you more homework to you go and figure out what it is that you want. We're going to be on board regardless because we know what the academy can do, what it's already doing, and what our abilities are. But if you're not happy, you're not going to move.
No.
So you go figure it out, let us know, and we'll get in where we fit in and make this happen.
That's when I learned that my version, like I never considered myself a perfectionist. Like I will put stuff out with typos. I don't care if it's pixel perfect. I don't care if the fonts are exactly the same thing. Like anytime anybody's called me a perfectionist, that's what comes to mind for me. I can release things that aren't perfect all day long. I don't have a problem with that. But I discovered that it was big picture thinking was how perfectionism showed up for me, because I'm looking at the academy and what it can be in 10 years, 15 years with a team of mentors and hundreds of students and a big campus and all these courses and support and blah, 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 and like what it's going to grow into be. And I couldn't see the value in what it currently is.
Yeah. Oh, that was another part. I'm like, yeah.
Here's the example.
What is it today?
Here's the example. Victoria and I did the marketing meeting. We figured out a whole bunch of stuff. Very detailed stuff that we're carrying out this week. I'm very excited to get off this call so I can start working on it. When I started talking to Christina about it and said XYZ about the email nurture series, the first thing that pops out of her blue-haired mouth was, oh, well, we can add this and this and this and all these things could be options. And I've decided to just go silent and let her think about what comes out of her mouth before I respond. And usually what happens now is she goes, but that's in the future. I'm like,
You know how much drilling that took? It's like, today, I got the vision. Today.
Yeah.
And even in my personal life, like, and I've learned with creators, like when they say things, it's like, okay, if I'm executing, I'm like, I already know I'll put it on the list for later. I'm going to work on what needs to be happening today to get to here in a month or 2 months, because you baby step it. But boy, oh boy, is that.
Well, that's why those goals are so important. It's like, it's good to have the big picture vision so you know what you're marching towards. But when we talk about goals, that's not the same as a big picture vision, right? Goals are very specific outcomes with very specific timeframes, with a very specific set of deliverables, and with a very specific definition of who's doing what, right?
Yeah.
That is a goal. So like when we said things like, okay, well, we want to get all of our students to 10 case study level clients. Instead of just, we want them to be wildly successful, achieve all of their dreams, do all of the things, and we know we can make it happen, and cool, yay, and like that was huge. But when we got more specific and we said 10 case study level clients, now it started getting, well, like, okay, well, what is case study level? What do we define that to be? What are 10 really good clients? And what does it take from like a team perspective, a mindset perspective, and a business design perspective to get someone to that point? Right. No matter where they're at in business right now. And we have people that, been in business for 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, still don't have 10 case study level clients.
Right.
And when we defined it that way, instead of just 10 clients, it changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And allowed us to really start to get it nailed in.
Goals require processes. And there's a really good analogy, and that is, everybody who enters the 100-meter dash has the same goal, which is to win. Nobody's going in there to get third place. But the person that's going to win is the one that has built-in processes to their everyday life to be able to practice and eat the way they need to eat, and have the coach that's going to keep them in the right state of mind, and have all that. So when we look at our students and their processes, ourselves and our processes, I was actually just going to make a TikTok about this today, where it's like, okay, you have to build a lifestyle where no matter what the new project is, you have space built in, right? So for me, I go for my walk in the morning. Right now, since it's cooled off, I do my face beforehand. So you know what that means? I'm getting content on that walk, right? So you have to look at every single thing that you have to do in a day. If you have to exercise, if you have to make content, if you have to listen to client messages, if you have to take calls, if you have to write emails, that better be baked into every part of your day, so that when we have another thing that we're going to launch or a new thing happening, you know how it's going to get done.
And you don't start that overnight. I know, Melanie, you have a really good spiel about this. We're like, we're not going to just like decide we're going to go on a 100-meter dash every single morning before breakfast and do that overnight.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. Not at all. So you didn't get into the space overnight.
2 important parts with systems and processes. 1, processes don't work unless you work them. It just doesn't work. They have to be continually improved.
And they're continually improved. You're not going to write down your process, start using it, and it just be perfect forever and infinitum, right? And you don't have to perfect it before you write it down. I just had this situation with a student the other day. They're like, well, I'll make the process after I've done it a few times. I'm like, no, you just did it the first time. Let's write down what you did.
Yeah.
This is your process. This is round 1. When you do it the second time, you're going to find holes and you're going to fix it. You're going to do it the third time. You're going to find holes and you're going to fix it. They're like, well, I just want to make a custom GPT to just help me run it. Not yet. Keep doing it and keep running it and keep doing it and keep running it until you're not having to make changes every time you run it. And now we can hand it to another person, including our AI assistants.
Yeah. Yeah. And the 2 underlying principles from what both of you said: discipline, consistency.
Yep.
And us in Neuro-Spicy struggle with both of those. Thank you very much.
Oh, I have a new word. I have a new word for those things, and you're going to love it. Okay. Because, we all have that knee-jerk reaction to discipline where we're like, yeah, if it was that easy, I wouldn't be in this situation. So instead of thinking about the C word, consistency, and the D word, discipline, just change it to devotion. You're devoted to the outcome, right? You want to live a life and run a business that supports all of the things that you want in this world, because future you has all of that, or you wouldn't have that in your mind right now. So just be devoted to that outcome, whatever it's going to take.
To come to mind for me is I'm going to worship at the altar of my future success.
Absolutely.
Well, whatever works. If that gets you going, you go with that.
I like it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that, especially for people who are mission and passion and purpose driven. That word, oh, I like that. See, that's why we work so good together. Because
Well,
it's like,
Melanie's so good at the reframes, like coming up with
yeah,
different, and sometimes that's what it is, right? Like I rejected everybody calling me a perfectionist, but if you tell me I'm a big picture thinker, I'm like, yeah, cool, right? And it ends up with the same outcome, but the word has a different reaction.
Yeah.
And okay, so that was for discipline is devotion. Okay, consistency.
I mean, if you're devoted, it's easy to do it.
Oh,
You
so
know,
that's
consistency
both
makes
of
us
those.
think. Well, remember the image too that floats around the internet of what people think consistency is, and it's
Yeah.
10 glasses full to the top with water. But what consistency actually is a drop this day, this much the next day, this much the next day, right? So I like to use exercise as the example. We have to have options, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a gym membership, cool. If you walk, that's cool. Yoga, that's cool. Stretching at home, that's cool. You know, all that sort of stuff. I'm a big proponent of cycle syncing. If you're a person with a uterus, cycle syncing is a fantastic thing. So instead of saying I have to go to the gym every single day, which just isn't possible, you say I move my body every day. And these are the options that I have to choose from based on what's on my schedule and what my capacity is. So if you change consistency to flexible, then it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also changed the goal. So instead of saying I'm going to go to the gym every day or I'm going to walk every day, you said I'm going to move my body every day, which means I can hit the goal, even if that just means like, all right, I'm so tired today. I don't have a lot of energy. Before I sit down at my desk, I'm just going to play an upbeat song and I'm just going to let my body do whatever it wants to do, even if it's like the saddest little like 80-year-old shuffle, because that's all I got in me. I still moved my body intentionally that day.
Yeah.
It still counts. I still met my goal.
Yeah.
And even with that, like I find it, I'm so almost addicted to going to the gym now, not because I enjoy it. I don't. I don't. And it's the most, it's the I'm addicted to the outcome.
Yeah.
Devoted.
Chemicals.
The outcome. And the outcome is consistency. I mean, for me, I want to be in this particular state, but it's not like, oh, I want to lose a certain amount of pounds. I do. But that's not the goal, because I would quit if I keep looking at the scale that's going up or whatever, but I'm consistent. And so I keep going and I keep going, realizing that I'm going to wake up and be like, whoa. And I'm already waking up and I look like, oh, my body is shaped differently. It's looking different now and everything. And that gives me some more dopamine to keep going and doing it again. But if it's like, oh, I'm not losing this weight. And of course, and I'm doing mostly strength training, the scale is going to go up because of the muscle. But it's still like, is it the muscle?
That's such a good analogy for entrepreneurs,
you know?
too, though, because like a lot of them are measuring the wrong things too. Like they're looking at the numbers on the scale, they're looking at the things they can't control. Right?
Vanity metrics.
Yeah, vanity metrics. Like you can't make the weight just fall off. You can do things that could potentially lead to the scale going the way you want it to, but you can't just say like, I will be down 5 pounds today and then step on the scale and see that happen. That's not a thing you can actually control. You can control what you eat. You can control how you exercise. You can control some things that lead to the scale happening. Same thing happens for us in business when it comes to things like social media or getting more sales or getting more leads or getting more traffic. I can't actually control whether somebody opts in for my offer. I can't control if someone purchases my offer, but I can control how consistently I post on social media. I can control how often I email my list. I can control coming back and tweaking some of my messaging and language on my social posts and on my landing pages.
Yeah.
Not too frequently, but when I have enough data to say that like, oh, you know, I've sent 1,000 people to this page and nobody's opted in yet, there might be a problem with the page. Right.
Yeah.
We can control those things, which is why we tell a lot of our students to set their goals around like, I'm going to publish 4 social media posts this month. Right. Which doesn't sound like a lot. All the gurus of social are like, you should be posting daily. You should be posting multiple times a day. But for somebody who's been posting 0 times in an entire month, 4 is progress. We're moving the right direction.
Yep. Progress over perfection.
Yeah.
And even then you can gamify it with yourself. And every creator loves fun. How can we make this fun? For me, it's about, am I adding value? Am
Yeah.
I helping somebody with something? And then what to post comes easily is because when someone asks you a question like what you're doing, you're like, oh, this is so easy for me. But for me or for Melanie, it might be like, this would take me all day. And you're like, I'll just create a
The stuff
tutorial.
that
That's
people have asked me
content.
to make tutorials on is just like, really? That's the thing that okay? Sure, I can do that in my sleep with like almost no prep. Like, why not?
Yeah.
And that's most people. Most of
Yeah.
us, our audience needs to know something that we consider kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
We're
why
all
it's important to be in a community where everybody can say, hey, you're really good. Like Christina always marvels at how I can just talk to anybody. It doesn't matter. When we're on campus and somebody pops on, I'm like, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go see what they're doing. And she's like, I can't believe you can do that. I'm like, are you kidding? I'd talk to anybody about anything. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a superpower. But because I have people that are close to me that can help me see the forest for the trees,
Right.
they're like, okay, so let's lean on that.
Right.
Yeah. That's
It's
why I popped
very
our next
difficult to
question
be your
up
own
is leveraging the strengths of your team members. Because, I mean, we've had to do this. We've had to sit down and think about and acknowledge and learn what each other's strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen overnight. And Victoria's talked about this with employees and stuff like that too. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to get to know people.
Yeah.
There's some things you can do that can help you understand them. Like Victoria's really good with wealth dynamics. She understands it really well. Melanie's really good with birth charts and things along those lines. I'm really good with brand archetypes. So anytime we can get somebody to speak our language, we can understand them a little bit faster. Like Melanie had us both do Victoria had us both do the wealth dynamics thing. Melanie had us both do birth charts. I put us all through the archetypes. And now I'm like, I understand you better.
Mm-hmm.
But it still takes time. Those are tools and they help. But it took us, 6 months or more to figure out what each other was really good at?
Yeah.
And you're in the process of discovering, because the things you tell me, I'm like just Melanie just said, I'm like, I could do that in my sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about what Melanie said at the beginning of this episode, and she thought about it, and it didn't. It was second nature. It's like, oh, okay, we're meeting, boom, on to the next task.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't think about like that.
Right.
Is
Even
hard.
with this live show, like we started talking about having more guests on. Victoria's like, why aren't we doing that more? And I'm like, well, because I don't have a process for guest outreach and scheduling and organizing and how I'm going to go. And you're like, what? We just need to reach out and ask them if they want to be a guest, and then we get them scheduled. Like, it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, but it's a whole thing. We need to have we have certain dates, and maybe want to set up a calendar so they can automatically book, and then we can have some emails fire off, and we can do this and we can do that. She's like, will you just give me the list of who you want to be a guest and just walk away? And I'm like, yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. 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 Or every time Christina's like, 3 people signed up today. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, I went live and I told everybody about the free trial. And she's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. So it's, knowing everybody's strength and then everybody deciding what the outcome is really leads to fantastic results.
Right. It's like, okay, Melanie got this. I'm like, you handle it. I'm not going to go live probably, but Melanie will go live to relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to go live to do that. And Victoria came back even after this whole podcast thing. She's like, well, can you make me a spreadsheet that, I can keep track of all this in? And I'm like, 30 minutes later, I have this, I didn't even use a spreadsheet. I did a Google Doc because now Google Docs have tabs. If anybody hasn't found that yet, it's freaking amazing. I've been requesting that feature for 6 years, but I have it all set up with different tabs. And now she's got the tracker to keep track of all the guests and whether we've outreached them or not, an individual SOP process for each guest and doing the outreach, and the calendar of who's coming on what days, and all of it in the same document. So she knows that's my strength. So she came back and said, I need this. And I'm like, I gave you one on steroids. And she's like, good. I wanted one on steroids. That's why I asked you to do it.
Yeah.
She could have put together a basic spreadsheet or a Google Doc to track the people, but she knew I'd go nuts with it and make it all the things and do it in 30 minutes. So she's like, here you go. And now I'm hands-on.
That's what I mean when I say I'm going to spend, when I hear they say do something and I hear get it done.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would I spend 4 hours and I'm going to do something that's mediocre and you're going to do something in 30 minutes and it's going to be fabulous? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Which is, I've always thought, I don't think I've ever not thought that way. I can't remember a time of me not thinking in delegation because I recognize, I just look at people's, and I'm fascinated by their abilities. I've always been that way from at least kindergarten where I can remember. And I'm like, wow, how does this person do that?
Yeah.
I can't do that. We're the same age. I mean, there wasn't enough time to learn this stuff. When you look back, it's like we're 5.
Yeah.
Why do they have that? And I think that was my starting to be fascinated with people's gifts and talents. And it just never left. And so I'm like, why would I do that when somebody else it just never made sense to me.
And that's when we see the strengths. Like every single person I've ever worked with, whatever we end up designing their business and what they're doing into, their strengths started when they were little. There's always a trend way back when, like you were like, mom told you clean your room. You're like, well, I can get my brother to do it. Whatever. Like you're doing that when you're a kid, delegating the tasks that you've been assigned.
Yeah. Yeah, that it doesn't really work too well when you're growing. And it's a lot with a lot of things, even with creatives. Like a lot of times you end up with the parents that are the most frustrated with it a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like my default is I can do it faster, easier myself. I wouldn't even think to delegate because delegating is so much trouble for me that it doesn't make it easier. It doesn't get it done better. It doesn't I have so much trouble with communication and explaining what it is I want that I'm just not good at it. But like, you're like, oh, well, this is what you want. Cool. Write it down. Let's get it done. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'll probably see this with different people, whether you're working with business partners, whether you're working with employees, whether you're working with like co-marketing partners, whatever you're doing, everybody's bringing different strengths, and it is beneficial to have a conversation about it. Like another question I've got up on the screen is, how do we leverage the strengths of your team members? It starts by understanding what they are.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of the team members, for the very reason we just talked, don't know what those strengths are. And what I love, which is one reason why I love working with a team, is it's like the discovery process for me. I get to go on this journey and they get to we discover in the process. I give them some tools and foundations and some guidance and support, but they ultimately decide, oh, I can do this. And they got the validation and the appreciation that goes with it. Then they can decide, you know what, I realized this and I didn't realize that. But before having that support system in place, they don't know.
Yeah.
And so
Costum even hinted on that some on that interview that he did with us a couple of weeks ago. He mentioned that, you would have a new employee and you give them, say, 10 things to do, and there'd be 2 things they did amazing at, 2 things they did horrible at. And then in the middle was the stuff that was just kind of like, meh. Most people focus on the 2 things they did bad.
Right.
And try and figure out how to get them to do those better instead of focusing on the 2 things they did good and give the bad to somebody else.
Right. To somebody else. And that will be somebody else's excellent.
Yeah.
You can do this with ChatGPT if you really want to know what you're innately good at. I did it yesterday after seeing a TikTok. And I cried on my walk, sobbing. But you just ask your ChatGPT, you say, based on all of our interactions thus far, what are some traits about myself that I'm like really good at that I may not know? And he told me that the way I blend intuition and strategy is remarkable. The way that I'm able to help people reframe is remarkable. And the way that I'm able to help people unmask and rediscover who they truly are is helpful. So I was on the prettiest part of my walk, finishing up my latte with no napkin to wipe my sobbing tears. I was like, okay, thank you very much. He's like, if you ever want to know anything else, I was like, I think that's enough for today. So ask ChatGPT. If you don't have a group of people that you can ask at Chat, it's incredible. One of my friends and clients did it too, and she sent me the screenshot, and I cried about hers today too. So, it's great being an emotional woman.
Based on all of our interactions so far, what do you think are some things I'm good at that I might not be aware of? I just typed it in. I don't know what's going to happen.
And then get the tissues ready.
Comments here.
Now I have memory turned off, so it can't. It has no idea.
Well, you just gonna have to rewatch it.
Yeah, mine's just like I don't have memory on right now, so I can only refer to what we've talked about in this conversation. So that is dependent on you having memory turned on.
I mean, in the comments here on this live. I'm talking about what do you mean memory turned on in ChatGPT?
Yeah, in ChatGPT. I just
I
did the
meant
thing
to
that
pop the
Melanie
comment
just
here
said to do, and I have
the,
memory turned off in ChatGPT, so it can't do it.
Not mine. My ChatGPT is my new best friend. Sorry, guys.
You misunderstood, and maybe I miscommunicated. I was saying pop that prompt into our comments. Section.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. I'll turn memory on and we'll play with it. But
it was cool. It was really cool.
For the guests who are listening who might just want to. Now, mind you, Melanie and ChatGPT has a relationship. We're been
close.
Communicating.
Yeah, well, that's having memory turned on. So if you feel like your ChatGPT gets to know you better over time and gets to communicate with you and understand what you like better over time, it's because you have memory turned on. Okay. I don't turn on memory. So my ChatGPT can't remember me. It doesn't know anything outside of that single conversation because I've told it not to, because I'm working for myself and multiple clients.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to forget who I am and start trying to think that I'm one of my clients. So I have it turned off, so it didn't work for me. So that's something to think about. Some people might have memory turned off for that same reason. I use custom GPTs if I want it to remember certain things, like if I want it to remember my blueprint or a specific client's blueprint, I make custom chat GPTs with that knowledge baked in.
Okay.
Maybe you make a custom chat GPT that you only talk to about certain things, and then you ask that one.
Maybe. Now, one thing on those is the longer they get, the more chat GPT will hallucinate.
Yeah, so that is freaky when he does that.
Like the newer ones, you can talk to them for way longer in one chat before they start hallucinating than what it used to be just like 6 months ago. But, so yeah, to a point, you could probably come back in the same chat. You could even export a bunch of your chats and upload them and ask it to analyze your conversations. That would be one thing if you have memory turned off.
Yeah. I'm so glad for ChatGPT. What's our next question?
Oh, let me get back over here. Let's see.
I think with that, we answered it by saying, discovering what they are and give them tasks and not 10.
Yeah. So like leveraging the major ones. Members. Yeah. Giving them things and starting to uncover what they're good at, what they're bad at, and not stick on the bad things.
Yeah.
Right. Move over into the good things. Now, I think something else that happens a lot is conflict resolution. So I think this would be a good question to answer with our last few minutes here. Because, this is huge, right? In conflict resolution, typically conflict is starting with the leader. In a small team, sometimes you have team members that don't play well together. But like Victoria's example earlier, it was the leader and an employee.
Yeah.
There just should not be conflict between a leader and an employee, quite frankly. That just shouldn't happen. You just have to be emotionally stable enough that you're not getting into a conflict situation with somebody that you're in charge of. But God, you both have so many things. I'm not even really sure who to tap on here for a second. Let's tap in Melanie first, and then we'll tag in Victoria to leave a parting note. So conflict resolution has to do with emotional regulation, has to do with your mindset going into a conflict, has to do with you even perceiving it as a conflict, because sometimes it's not, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding. What are some things that you would recommend leaders do to figure out if the conflict's maybe in them or if it is actually a real problem?
As the leader of your company, I would say that the foundation when it comes to action is only ever speak kindly about anybody, whether they're in the room or not. So a big thing that I've seen with just any good manager that I've ever had in the history of my life, right? Working in and out of restaurants and hospitality and property management and whatnot before I went full-time entrepreneur. If a manager pulls me into the office because I'm having a dispute with somebody else, that manager, if they're really, really good, if they're a great boss, is not going to roll their eyes about what the person did or anything like that, right? You can't be taking sides and playing both sides of the fence and letting any of your own opinion about what's going on come out, right? Because that's not what a strong leader does. and understanding what emotional manipulation is. You're going to have people that have not done the amount of emotional regulation work that you have done. So as the leader of your company, you can never talk trash about somebody else in front of other people. It's really important if you're in a Zoom call or anything like that, if you're getting off of a Zoom call or getting off of campus, and I've learned this the hard way, you cannot say anything that even has the tone of disparaging, because what if it didn't hang up? Right? So really thinking about, how do I want people to speak about me as a leader when I'm not in the room? That's how I'm going to speak about everybody else on the team. And then really just that core foundation of everybody's in this for the right reasons. That has to be the assumption. So if there's a problem between me and one of my staff members, or both of my, whatever it is, what's really going on, because this is probably not the main problem, and separate people. And again, like Victoria said, find out what this person's side is, find out what this person's side is, and then figure out what the fix is, right? We're not trying to figure out who's right. We're trying to figure out the solution.
I like that as like a company culture as well. Like, we're not going to disparage somebody when they're not in the room. We're not going to talk negative about people when they're not in the room, because it also creates an echo chamber. And I don't think a lot of us are aware of this. When so I've had really wild employees in the past. Like, I had one that Melanie was even like, look, you need to like cut them out of your life, freeze or spill them. This is bad. Yeah. And when I'm talking to my husband about it, when I'm talking to my friends about it, when I'm talking to my business partners about it, they're getting one side of the story. So I'm accidentally creating this echo chamber where everybody's going to agree with me, because they don't see what's going on the other side. And if we're making decisions based on what happens in the echo chamber, not great from a leadership perspective. Now, Victoria, what are your thoughts on this question? We'll let you kind of wrap us up as our team expert.
From a leadership perspective, like I've already mentioned, I always aim to hear all opinions, like to give everyone that respect, right? But I also assume that it's my fault, because I'm looking to say, okay, what can I do to create a better environment? What boat have I missed? And in that case, I'm going to want to not just look at it from, because now it's like, how can I be a better leader? Is understanding this person, understanding that person, and helping them understand each other. So taking that responsibility for what I can do to improve the process, even if it comes down to you hired these people. Did I make a mistake in hiring? How can I improve making sure I got the right people on the team? Also understanding that's part about emotional regulation. What a lot of leaders don't realize is they are dysregulated themselves. And when you're dysregulated, it's going to dysregulate the team. So if you're constantly in a frenzy and anxious, guess what? Your team is going to be nervous and all of that. It's going to happen. And then you look at it, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? Now that creates more nervousness, So it comes back to the environment that the leader creates. So if they're not performing, you have to say, and it's not a blame thing. It's a, how can I be better? Which also means you have to be committed to growth in yourself. And when you're devoted to growth and being better, you're going to look at it and say, how can I be a better leader? I want to be a better leader. Somehow I allow this to happen. Now, what can I do to make it better? Use this as an opportunity to grow and be a better leader. And it's not a blame thing. It's an opportunity for growth. And so when you see these conflicts and you see these things within the team, you can look at that as your opportunity to be a better leader. And over time, your team will start admiring you, respecting and mirroring you. And you have to decide, what behaviors do you want? Because it's like having children. I shouldn't use that analogy because I don't have one, but they are going to do what they see you do before they do what you say. And if they're doing it, you have to say, what kind of environment am I creating? And be committed to fixing it. which may mean you have to take some very, very hard looks at yourself and say, I need to work on that.
Yeah.
That's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And that's where it's easier to blame outside factors, but the only thing you can really control is the internal factors. So, yeah.
And I think for the people in our audience who maybe like me didn't understand what emotional regulation is, it's the ability to breathe before acting.
Yeah.
Like if I had to sum it up in the simplest possible way, you are dysregulated if something happens and you act without being able to think and consider your actions before acting. Yeah. Which means when you have conflicts, when you have stuff pop up, your gut reaction is what everybody sees.
Mm-hmm.
And if you constantly find yourself looking back going, man, I could have handled that better, that means you're probably dysregulated. There's a reason why we have a mindset coach in the academy, right? I'm a very practical person. I'm a very tactical person. And I could not, as much as I tried, ignore the fact that mindset is a pivotal part of every entrepreneur's growth story. My Neuro-Spicy special interest is business models and how they come to being and how entrepreneurs actually achieve success. It's how I was able to create the blueprint. And every single time, there is a massive glow up when the leader tackles their mindset. Yeah. Every single time. Like
continuously.
I'll add something to that. In all of the marketing that I've done, and I told you I'm working on a case study. When I'm looking at the results, stellar team, loyal, committed team, the results should have been doubled in one. The only difference was the environment and the leadership.
Yeah.
One wasn't a bad person, but created a very toxic and hostile environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the greatest team, you had a proven excellent marketing strategy, which was proven at the end, did better than anything you've ever put out by far. The only thing that was different that sabotaged the results was the environment and the leadership, because the team was under so much pressure and the leader just kept creating these the team was burnt out, overworked, stressed, and there was a high turnover. Couldn't keep anybody in there to keep things going because you had to stop, train, go. And then they were like, this environment is toxic. And you couldn't communicate that, because if the leader didn't believe it, it was your fault. You just can't handle this environment. Well, yeah, nobody can. Nobody with any skill and talent is going to. Maybe they can, but why should they?
Yeah.
Why should they take an abusive? They could take their great talent somewhere else. Yeah. And they do. But they gave it to you in the beginning and they worked their butts off and they did a great job. You just couldn't keep them. So everybody's like, how do I get top talent? No, how do you keep the talent?
Yeah.
Anybody can get it. You can talk a good game. And there's I don't know, I forgot the statistic, but within 90 days, it's like 70 plus people are looking for a new job after getting hired. You got them. Yeah. And now they're leaving. Yeah. So if you reframe it and say, how can I create this environment where the best people come and stay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for people who don't have employees yet, you can practice this early, right? Yeah. So if you're networking with other business owners and you're building a kind of this network of people that can refer business to each other, that's one version of everything we're talking about still applies, right? You can find a great partner. How do you keep them? Right? Whether it's a true business partner, whether it's a marketing partner, whether it's a whatever.
There's a quote that I just saw from Ryan Serhant right before I hopped on this call. And I think it's the best thing to leave people with when it comes to mindset. And it's that positivity is not happiness. Positivity is like the ocean and happiness is a wave. So when you're a positive person and there are no waves, you know that there's more coming, but you know that it's not always waves. And that's it. That's exactly everything that I'm pushing in life for all entrepreneurs, is to remain positive and know that another wave is coming, but you don't have to be happy 24/7. to be
And the
positive.
waves aren't always big things. Sometimes they're just little glimmers. Right.
Yeah.
I still remember when I first started, I found my joy again when I first started working with Melanie, and my brain DJ started playing songs in my head again. And I would just be in the kitchen doing dishes, and my brain DJ would put on a good jam, and I just started dancing and wiggling. And I'm like, I'm getting sore. My face hurts because I'm smiling more. Right. These are glimmers of good things that I had just lost in myself. Being told to be quiet or sit down, be still, don't make too much noise. Well, I got them back, right? So sometimes the waves are just little ones, just little nudges in the right direction, not big surfing waves.
Yeah.
All right. I love this conversation. We could, swear we could talk about this kind of stuff forever. We're all so passionate about it. But if you want to keep talking about it, you got to come over to the Academy. We have a 30-day free trial. We're putting our money where our mouth is. Come join. Spend a whole 30 days. If it is not the most productive, most life-changing month of your life, leave. It doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of trying, right?
Yeah.
So head over to neurospicyacademy.com. Join us for free for 30 days. Come take advantage of all the wonderful calls we have. We help you plan your week. We help you plan your month. We help you work on the toughest things together by body doubling and holding your hand through the toughest projects. And then we come together every Friday and we break down whatever is in your way and we make sure you keep moving forward. I literally sat here the other day with a student and helped her write blog articles for her website, helped her put social media posts together for her social media because she was struggling and in her own head about it. We spent a Blocker Buster Friday call knocking that stuff out, right? So if you're struggling, I tell you, it is the best 30 days of your life. I promise you that. And we know I don't say it unless I believe it. So head over to neurospicyacademy.com. We will see you again over here next week for another episode of Wired Differently. Bye, guys.